So, two pieces of disclosure here. I am not Lee Doyle. Lee Doyle has a day job, and he got called away. Equally apparent, I'm not Jocelyn Griffin. So we had a couple of changes in the panel. My name is Doug Weaver, and I've been around iMedia for a number of years now and help out with content. And I've been asked to step in. About 48 hours ago, I got a call from Masha saying, "Hey, would love you to step in and work with this panel." And I was more than happy to do it. And I tell you, just this last couple of days of getting ready for this has been truly fascinating. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to get our arms around this beast that is called. Let me just make sure that I've got it right here. Finding brand safe inventory in a world of media fragmentation. And I think that one thing that became apparent as I started talking with the gentlemen who are to my left here is that we're really talking about a much bigger topic than that, but we're going to try to keep it at least a little bit focused in the area that we're talking about. The issue at hand is what is to become of the long tail and what is to become of the media buyer role, the media seller role in the future as we try to take advantage of where people really are across the entire web. We've seen over the last several years a lot of those trends take place in our business. We've seen the emergence of networks and exchanges that are represented here on the panel. We're now seeing this new trend represented by agencies becoming their own networks and essentially becoming reverse demand aggregators. So a really interesting time, and as my friend Wendell Millard said about a year ago in an industry speech, my space is your space. Everybody seems to be stepping across the lines and doing a little bit of what everyone else is doing. So very quick introductions, then I'm going to take my ham-handed effort at trying to sort of put everybody in their places on stage here. So you just met Don Epperson, and you heard a great deal about what Don's agency is looking to do. Don really represents that space where agencies are truly getting into the network space themselves. They are becoming reverse demand aggregators, and I'm going to have you react to all this in just a minute, Don. Reverse demand aggregators, and in a sense becoming rather like data and inventory cartels on behalf of their clients. And I have some questions to ask you on that front. Jay Sears is the EVP of Context Web, which is the creator of the AdStack exchange, very successful ad exchange. I love going back into people's bios and picking out some of the names that only those of us who have been around for a few years will remember. But Edgar Online was part of his background. We have Bob Verrico. Interestingly, Bob and I represent, I think, the only two people who ever come to iMedia who are from the state of Vermont, and we had to come all the way to Palm Springs to get together. And Bob has a terrific pedigree as well. iVillage, iVillage. We have TheStreet.com, BeliefNet. That's an interesting grouping there. How did you're really covering all points of the spectrum. And he's the founder of the investing channel. So whereas AdStack is making sense of the long tail and of providing context to the web through technology, Bob, in your network orientation, you're taking the old-fashioned approach. You're doing human intervention and really organizing the sites based on your ability to uniquely represent and kind of control who's in your network. And representing the ad buying community, good friend, longtime collaborator, Jim Meskauskas. And Jim is from Hawk Media, Mediasmith. He is now the VP and Director of Online Media for Icon International. And I love this fact from Jim's background. He worked at a San Francisco agency, so I can literally say he did come from left field. So,
that's correct.
Terrific. So first of all, since you kind of gave us the setup here, I want to ask you to kind of respond to my characterization of what you're doing. Are you guys, in fact, a reverse demand aggregator? Are you looking to create kind of a cartel on behalf of your clients?
I wouldn't call it a cartel. We think a lot of value. We think there's a lot more value in the ecosystem between the consumer, the publisher, the ad networks, and the exchanges, and the advertiser to move to the advertiser, okay? The advertiser has the ability, they've got a ton of data, they do have the demand stream, and what we really don't want to do is to have someone take a remnant, put a little intelligence on it, and sell it for 7 times what we could have bought it for before. What I think agencies are going to move to is having their own intelligence and buying, okay, maybe the remnant, maybe it's not remnant, it's guaranteed, unguaranteed, whatever it is, but having the value accrue to the advertiser.
So currently the markup happens before it gets to you. You'd like the markup to happen after you touch the inventory.
That's exactly right. We would
So
like
buy low, sell high.
buy low, sell high. It's not. I mean, we're not in the business of to be clear. I mean, again, we're working on the benefit of the client, and that means that we're not trying to arb inventory per se. We're trying to get the best value for our clients, and taking obviously a percentage of that. But there's a lot of value that is not accruing to the advertiser that we think the new systems they will. Call it demand aggregation. I wouldn't call it a cartel, but certainly that's where we're going.
Okay. So by the way, if anybody's all at Twitter over this conversation, don't keep it to yourself. You can actually, if you have a Twitter account and you happen to be twittering right at this moment, hey, that's just between you and your creator. You can add @iMedia Agency to the beginning of your message. So begin your message with @iMedia Agency, and your message is going to be captured at something called the Twitter camp. That just sounds wrong. And that's an aggregation point that's capturing the discussion that's going on as people are looking at watching the content this morning and throughout the event. So remember that @iMedia Agency at the beginning of your, I guess you call them tweets, is that correct? I'm showing my age here. Okay. So Jay, you've got you're coming into this discussion representing one of the more successful ad exchanges.
Right.
Sounds like Don is kind of creating his own over there. How do you feel about that, and kind of where do you guys come in and make sense of the disaggregated universe of the internet?
Yeah, it's a natural confluence, we think. So I think Don looks at things as a demand aggregator, and a lot of times he'll look at an exchange like an ad stack as a supply aggregator. And I think one of the things we would definitely agree on is that the currency now is at a page level, it's at an impression level. And you have to look at things on a very granular basis, and you have to make decisions in real time. So just like a financial market, we're now looking at things, and we have the ability to look at things on the fly in milliseconds to make decisions about kind of what's best for the marketer. And if we do it correctly, net, we should all kind of wind up ahead. And then the other thing I would say is, this is not kind of if, but when we all get to this, because the way that kind of content is created on the internet and the speed at which it's created and the amount that it's created is we have to be able to make sense of what's been fragmented and kind of put it back together in buckets that are relevant to the guy who's paying, to the marketer.
I'm going to take one little quick side trip, though. I'd like you to, for the sake of, for my benefit, because the definition keeps shifting ever so slightly, give me that clear delineation between network and exchange.
Yeah, the way that we define an exchange is it's a platform where buyers and sellers have control. So different exchanges are going to do this different ways. A lot of our control for the buyer has to do with page-level content type and context. Someone asked a question about that earlier. And for sellers, for publishers, a lot of our control has to do with setting the price that you want, setting your clearing price.
Okay. So do you have a sales force that goes out and represents the inventory that's in the exchange?
We do have a sales force that goes out and represents the inventory, and then we also have publishers that are buyers onto the exchange, agencies that are buyers onto the exchange. And one of the things that I think would be interesting for us to get into and talk about is this Wyndham Millard comment that you brought up, which basically roles are blurring. And I think for the last couple of years, we talked a little bit about this at breakfast, that we've all kind of been a little resistant and tried to stay in our camps. And what's happening is buyers are becoming sellers, sellers are becoming buyers, and eventually it's a bit to get your arms around it, but we're really all in the end traders. And it's how each of us want to trade and kind of interact with one another. But the technology is just an enabler.
Okay. So Bob, you represent the classic, I don't even call it the network model, but really more almost a rep firm model where you're representing a select number of medium and long tail sites. First of all, do you agree with the comment that we're all traders?
I do, yeah. in the end, it's going to really depend on where there's performance based on whatever metric makes sense. A true aggregation of the long and mid-tail, really allows, there's a lot of power in it. When you contextually bring together all these small and medium-sized sites, these sites don't understand ad placement. They don't have the content distribution. They don't have the infrastructure or whatnot to position their ad inventory or any of the ad inventory to the buying community at large. So by aggregating this and centralizing operations and whatnot, it provides a very true defragmented approach to buying. What these guys do is fine for us. We actually work with Jay, and if we need to extend our reach into particular verticals, we're investing. So if we need more options inventory, obviously we can go to Jay and try to extend our reach into options.
So this leads to an interesting, an interesting sort of role reversal. So you're a seller.
Yeah.
You're out there representing the inventory on this select group of sites to Jim. And you're saying, hey, Jim, we can get you active financial consumers and traders and day traders and so on and so on, within these environments. Unless we can't, in which case we're going to go to Jay and we're going to extend our reach and get some more of those people to add into the buy.
Or go and get another 15, 20, 100 publishers in that vertical. We do it in a way that's it's purely transparent and it's exclusive. So no one else sells the inventory on our aggregation of sites. Only us, it's exclusive. If we decide to tier the proposal to Jim, it might be, here's what your core buy is within investing channel and running here. And then, you know what, if you want to extend your reach, we can keep it a consolidated buy and work with other aggregators and other networks. Or, frankly, when we see trends, which we have seen recently, world currency and Forex and whatnot, we go out and, there's 50, 60, 70,000 long and mid-tail sites in the financial investing space. So we can go out to 20 or 30 or 50 sites that focus on the world currency markets and talk to them about coming over to our network. Most of them are using remnant networks now. So to move over to us, we provide other services well beyond just the advertising, such as ad placement, distribution, and whatnot. So it all depends. There's 3 or 4 levels that we can bring into the campaign.
So far everybody on that side is doing business with everybody else, right? So you're gonna do business, Don, with Bob's ad network. You're gonna do business with Jay's ad exchange. You're gonna buy from Jay. You're gonna sell to Don.
And in the end, though, it has to work. The numbers all have to work for us, right? And so if that all works, potentially yes. Okay.
Anybody confused yet? We doing all right? Okay, we're gonna keep plowing along here. To give us clarity, Jim Meskauskas. So Jim, you kind of represented. Again, I'm just gonna throw out wild characterizations, right? So you guys can respond to those. So you represent the other end of the spectrum, literally and geographically, from Don. Don is attached to the automation and optimization of the distribution of advertising process. You have always approached media planning from the perspective of, a little bit of art, a little bit of science, but trying to, site selection, things like that have always been a part of your value add to your clients. Yes. Does that go away? Do you feel threatened? Is it okay? Is it not okay?
I don't think that it should go away, but I think that what it might do is manifest itself in agencies being different, maybe 2 different kinds of organizations or more, but 2 general ones. And you've addressed this before in the past, actually, where you have a transactional enterprise and you have, I think you'd called it marketecture enterprise. There isn't necessarily, in an obvious way, a reason why an organization can't try to unify those things and have one inform the other. But I do think that if we focus too much on the data-driven aspect and try to approach advertising from the perspective that all of human behavior and its secret motives can be rendered into machine-readable form, we're going to lose some of the successes that we've had in advertising in the past. I mean, there's a reason why there's a Crispin Porter and Bogusky out there in the world. They're not an analytics enterprise. They're a, for lack of a better word, a human behavior influencing enterprise. And what they use to do it is a lot different than trying to yield efficiencies in media that we buy. Not that there's anything wrong with trying to yield efficiencies in the media that we buy, by the way. And there's an awful lot of inventory out there whose cost remains unassigned and its value is uncertain. And things like what Don is talking about doing and what Jay does gives agencies an opportunity to first assign a cost, and the sorts of analytics that Don is talking about bringing to the program allows agencies to then extract value and figure out just what the value is, and where the difference between the cost and the value happens, and how that then gets merchandised back to client and yielding their objectives, et cetera.
Just one comment on that is that value is not just price. Okay, value is many, many different things. And as I said, and this is why I said it right up front, the agencies aren't going to go away. You absolutely have to have this kind of artisan scientist. But we as an agency should use this information to inform and better inform our planning, to do better communications planning, better brand planning, whatever. But it's not value. We can't take a look at value as cost. We've got to look at it as informing the whole process. So again, all the agencies, none of the agencies are going out of the business, and none of the agencies are going to turn into 100% ad networks. But there's a lot of information there that we need to be able to put back into our planning.
All right, so let's talk about that sort of bifurcation of the agency model. And by the way, we have Masha and Catherine. You guys should be up with microphones, so we can stop at any point along the way here if somebody has a question. So just Masha, yell into the microphone if somebody raises a hand. So let's go to that. Let's go to that sort of bifurcation of the agency model. Yes, Jim's agency. I'm using you as a proxy for all the creative media shops, right? Jim's agency won't go out of business, but might it only do one kind of buying in the future, and then the kind of enterprises represented by you guys and Viveki and WPP would do the sort of distribution of messaging down the road?
No, I think it's still a nascent industry, right? And we happen to be large, and we happen to have the money to invest. Now, what that also means that if we can prove the concept, there are going to be a ton of new startups that come in that help do exactly what we do, help the small agencies, mid-sized agencies. Again, the creative process, the ideas, the artist in us all is going to stay. But maybe that underlying either buying or accruing data to the mix is going to change.
Okay. So, question for the panel as a whole. It's always seemed to me like control and scale are sort of opposing forces, right? They do battle with one another all the time. So the more you try to control something, and that's essentially the premise that started this panel, was that we can somehow sort of control the placement and the context of where ads are going to be. We can find safe environments, so that implies control. The internet itself is powerful and big because nobody controls it. So do you see that dichotomy as well? I mean, Jay, is it, you're obviously using technology algorithms to sort of deal with this issue. Do you have to give up a little bit of control in order to have the kind of scale that you guys operate on?
Well, I think one of the ways that you bring it back, and one of the ways that you try to deliver both, is move that decision making down to as granular a level as you can, right? So looking at every impression, looking at every page, versus looking at sites or kind of larger denominators of the ecosystem. And for us, a primary governor of that is context. For other people, it's cookie pools with certain types of user intent. So I think it can be delivered, but I think you're seeing kind of the early innovations of that right now. And I also think it's really is the next great battle. I mean, I think the search battle for all purposes is over. And if you look at the amount of investment that Microsoft and a Yahoo and a Google have made, they've building these platforms. It's in excess of $10 billion in the last 18 or 20 months alone. And I think that's what we're chasing, basically, this fragmented audience, and how we basically create audience on demand, and how we do it in a world that's just fundamentally different than just a few years ago.
So, Bob, let's drill a level down on that as well. You have so you come in with the most sort of controlled model of anybody in the panel, because you're saying, look, I not only know which sites I'm representing and which sites are in my network, but I'm exclusive. But they're exclusive to me. I'm the only one who can represent those. First of all, that does imply a certain limitation in scale. You can't sell the whole web.
Right.
Now you've said that you'll work with Context Web with AdStack to extend that reach when you need to. How do clients feel about that? You go in and talk to them about doing a buy on certain kinds of sites that you've groomed and sort of checked out, and then you're going to make it bigger and use the web. So you're trying to have sort of control and then some scale on the side.
We're actually, and we keep that completely transparent, right? So when we bring on sites, we assess them for editorial content, traffic, whatnot. Our loyalty is always to the advertiser. If a site doesn't perform, for whatever reasons, and I'm talking a little bit DR here, but for whatever the metrics are, if a site doesn't perform, the site's not is optimized out, and if a site continues not performing, it gets taken out of the network. So we have our core publishers that we bring in, we assess, we tag with double-click tags and whatnot. If, and we're having this with energy buys now and whatnot, if the buyer wants to extend further than what our audience offers or whatever, we can then tier the buy. Tiering the buy would mean you're buying from us once. We can tier the buy to partner networks that can also serve options inventory, potentially at a lower CPM, and that will be line itemed out at a different level. It may or may not be guaranteed, that will be an incremental different part of that buy. We also have one or two sites that have their own ad sales teams where we have guaranteed remnant relationships, and again, completely transparent. The best way for us to expand is through bringing on more publishers prior to the demand. But if we need to go further outside of our network, it's completely, it just goes as a separate line item.
Okay, so
and just for us, I mean, we try to stay away from having, before, again, you go from the publisher to the advertiser. The more people that are in that publisher to the advertiser, the less value is accruing to the advertiser. And so for us, we want to make...
Can you take one more pass at that one? I'm not sure I followed you on that
Meaning
point.
that he's got to make a profit. Everybody's got to make a profit in this chain,
right.
Okay? And, for us, we need to do our job a little bit better and say, if you can deliver this inventory, then that's the inventory you can deliver, and that's that. And then part of the media plan, you go to other publishers. But to have, a cascade of publisher, ad network, other ad network, finally the advertiser, is not good. And it's good in the sense that if the agency, for whatever reason, can't aggregate their own,
right.
Great, then you're adding value. But for us, for me, that's too far away. There are too many hands in the pot in that.
So the supply is being stepped on too many times before it gets to the...
Very much so.
Well, it's really the difference between premium. You got a better shot at getting what you want if you get first look at that user versus after it's been kind of sent down the chain a couple times.
Right.
Okay. So let's go back to the topic, and we'll go sort of at one end of the stage to the other here. So Jim, this whole premise we're talking about, finding safe inventory.
Right.
Do clients care?
Some of them do, some of them don't, and I've worked with both. To be a little bit more specific, pharmaceutical clients are far more concerned with where ads show up than, say, entertainment clients. And it depends, of course, on what kind of entertainment we're talking about. Mm-hmm. Not adult entertainment, I'm not talking about that. But I have a client who, their main interest is just, I'm above the fold, and the property that advertisement shows up on, wherever that happens to be, because what I'm trying to find are, maybe lots of little pieces of audience that I'm trying to get together to be a big enough audience that will move my business in a material way. Wherever I can find them in their little passion places, I don't really care so much about what those places are. As long as they're there, that's what's interesting, and as long as their engagement factor, however it is I choose to determine what that means, is high, then great, that's fine. But say a pharmaceutical advertiser, they care both about the book and its cover. I personally, just from a philosophical standpoint, feel that if you're reading the book and the book is good, it doesn't really matter whether or not you've heard of it or whether or not it's got a cover on it. I do, however, think that some clients do, and some never will, but some clients need to recognize that by entering the territory that is the modern media landscape, that it's kind of like Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. You can determine, the more you're sure of the position, the less you're sure of the speed, and vice versa. And I think that a lot of that applies to the advertising environment. Audiences are no longer controlled by the advertiser, which in the past has maintained control of their audiences by having their hands on the wheel of a very few media. Now that's no longer the case, and some comfort level will eventually evolve on the part of the client, perhaps, to relinquish some of that control and not mind so much. And that will probably happen with every retirement party. You know.
So, by the way, anybody who had Heisenberg uncertainty principle on your Jim Meskauskas bingo card, go ahead and scratch that one off. Masha, we have a question?
Hello, it's me again, your partner, Mr. Weaver.
Hello, Scott.
Quick question. Yeah, hi, Doug.
I did too.
Is what I've been listening to for the last half hour or so, actually all morning, is I've heard a lot about data. I've heard a lot about commodities, math, science, machines, tight budgets, and a little bit of profits as well. So for the panel, could you give us in the room some good news about the consultative seller, about how human beings are actually going to interact in this? Because something that Don just said just a moment ago, where value is not just price and that agencies won't go away, and then also that the artist in all of us is going to stay. Could you give us just a little bit of perspective on that, how the human being comes into all this?
Specifically, you asked about the seller constituency. You asked about the
Well, yeah, I
consultative
mean,
seller.
I think a lot of
consultative seller.
A lot of us on the selling side certainly are very interested in that, but
Yeah.
I've also heard Don
Okay.
mention that the artist and the agency won't go away. So I
Okay.
think it's kind of relevant to the whole room.
So this reminds me of that episode of The Office, which they just repeated the other night, where Dwight was competing with the internet, for sales, and the internet and the website started to speak to him. It became self-aware, and it was doing battle with him. So we've talked. Scott's right. We've talked a lot about sort of the disintermediation of people here in a lot of regards. So where do people make a difference?
Yeah, just one quick comment. I mean, it's not please, it's not. I'm not advocating at all that anybody, goes home and says they're going to be, replaced by a machine. All I'm saying are the tools to do media planning and buying are evolving. We will always have people out there that are doing complex media plans, that are doing, content integrations, that are doing cross-media plans. But the tools that they have at their disposal to be able to do those, and then to be able to see how effective those are fundamentally changing. So we're not going to become robots, clearly. But we have to improve the tools that we have today, and that's what we're advocating, that's what we're doing.
But we're going to have really cool robots working for us.
Very cool.
Right. Okay. Who else? I mean, give us something prescriptive about what either agency professionals do or that sellers do to keep themselves relevant beyond running the machine.
Well, I can tell you something I was thinking of is I think that the sellers still are the problem solvers. We're just an enabler. That's really it. But I have new tools that you can use. So see if I can give a very concrete example. We now have very people like Smart Money or Condé Nast, our IBD, are actually buyers on our exchange. Mm-hmm. Now, they're not doing this to do it. They're doing it because they're solving problems for their market or customer.
So the seller becomes like the general contractor, who goes and, I can do my own stuff. I can use my own unique capabilities, and then I'm going to get some more reach and
it's the classic solution selling we've always discussed. There are just some other tools in the bag.
Okay. Fair point.
I'm sorry to come back again, but I mean, the more data that we can share, okay, the better the plans become, the more integrated the solutions are. So for me, data is not, the end all, it's just enabler. I want our media plans to share data with a publisher to understand, again, back in the example, let's say our best customers came from publisher A. Once we found out that our best customers came from publisher A, we want to go deep. We want to establish a long-term relationship. We want to try things around whatever worked. We want to use our brains to come up with, new plans that are out there. Mm-hmm. So again, it's not just that one time, it's actually an enabler to do more and deep planning.
There's things you do with an ATM, and things you do with a bank teller, right? And I think that's going to remain the same. We're a little more blocking and tackling than the others here, but the seller is still involved, very, very much involved at many levels. Potentially, the tools will be tools for the sellers to price the inventory. With our lead generation platform, the inventory prices itself. With our display platform, we have to price the inventory. So maybe those two will start coming together a little more. So the sellers will have tools to effectively represent the inventory.
Okay, so I want to do one more here, and this is actually a line of questioning that I was going to get to about how does the role of the X change? So Jimmy, how does the role of the veteran media planner change?
Well, now what's interesting is when we're addressing those who've only grown up in online, that media planner is already very comfortable with the notion of automating a lot of tasks, because most of the tasks they perform are mundane, repetitive, and the kinds of things that make you want to be boiled in oil. And so they're okay with automating some of those things. But I think if we have the discussion remain too long and too hard on the notion of data, we end up with this sort of dystopian vision of buyers and sellers being replaced and all of their companies just being big warehouses where there's a machine, a man, and a dog, and the man's job is to feed the dog, and the dog's job is to keep the man away from the machine. I don't think that's going to happen.
Let that one sink in for a second. Okay, good.
Okay. I think that, to Don's point, more data is great, and machines are terrific for that. But data is just data by itself. Data has to be turned into information. And there are some maybe more complex machines that can help you do that. But to make the leap then from information to knowledge, that's not something a machine can do. They're very good at puzzles, but they're terrible at mysteries. And a lot of what we have to do are solve mysteries.
I would, just tacking on to this, and I'm spoken about this till I was blue in the face. I really think what we're talking about here with the advent of all this is finding a way to sort of allow sales organizations to take a lot of the low value activity they do, the pricing, the optimization, the distribution of messages, the undifferentiated distribution of messages like ad units, all that stuff that everybody can do, and we need to do some of it too, thanks very much, and get that out of their way so that their high-priced sales forces and their strong, thoughtful executives can go out and sell unique capabilities. So there are certain things, everything we've talked about in terms of this whole automation process is all commodity. They're all 15-second pre-rolls, and they're 468 or they're 728 by 90 banners, and so on and so on. Nobody is talking about being able to in any way automate that special thing that only website A can do, or that only ad network B can do. So you're going to compete, in my view of the future, you're going to compete based on the things that you do first, best, or only.
What clients really want are good ideas, and there's not a machine in the world that can give them that, and they don't really care where it comes from, they just want to get it first. If the agency is the one that's doing that, bully. If it's not, then they're going to go somewhere else for it. And it doesn't have to be the agency. It can be the media company directly. There are plenty of consultative sellers in this room who have worked with clients direct because of that.
And just real quick, networks and publishers act differently, and there's different ideas that go with each, and it's pretty. And that's some of the learnings too.
Absolutely.
Network sellers.
Hi, Andy Montford, Lodemy. Quick question for Don. Don, it was a great presentation. As you talked about your third-party data platform, one of the concerns on the client side could potentially be the sharing of data. Using the Coke example, Coke will spend $100 million this year online, but your next closest advertiser is only going to spend $30 million. How are you going to separate out and silo behavioral data across portals, search, and all the other places, and have the clients brought it up to you that they don't want to fund the smaller advertisers?
It's a great question, and you're absolutely 100% right on. There is no way you can mix client data, none whatsoever. Client data is client data, and that's it. Whether it's behavioral, contextual, whatever, it applies to their data set. I cannot envision without getting fired, I cannot envision a time where there will be that sharing of data, because you never know where that data is ultimately going to end up on, or how that information is going to affect a competitive situation with with another brand. So I think it's very much client specific, but some of our clients are very large. You have a lot of inventory, and that's something that we can still use from them.
Hey, well, I've got a question. When it comes to this question of data, by the way, just if you're raise your hand if you're a ad network sales organization, right? So blue, white badge folks, right? Keep your hand up if you get at all nervous about the issue of data.
No?
Probably half. I think about half kept their hands up. One of the things that I hear, not from all clients, and we represent a lot of the sales organizations, not from all clients, but from a significant minority, I would say, is, what? Give you my data? So Don, you want to put a box, kind of at my site level and record cookie data? Well, you could do business with me for about 30 minutes and put a cookie on every one of my users' browsers, and then you can reach them without me. How do you respond to that?
I mean, the data, again, it's the client's data. So for us, the thing that
it's the client's data, or it's the consumer's data, or it's, so if I'm the website, I've gone out and done a lot of marketing and built a relationship with consumers to get them to come and interact with me. So ultimately, the data belongs to the consumer. Their interaction with me is the fact that they interacted with me. That's kind of half theirs and half mine. You come in and you get that information.
No, what I'm saying is that I think that absolutely needs to be debated for our industry about who owns the data. And it gets to a point of, does the consumer own the data, and then should we actually compensate the consumer for that data, whether it's implicitly, meaning that they get less creative, less advertisement, or whether it's even some explicit way of doing it too. I just think that we as an industry shouldn't be fighting about who owns the data. Do you own the data? Do I own the data? But we should start thinking about holistically some of these issues, debate them so that we can solve them. If I talk to my advertisers, clearly if they're buying the impression on the website, the fact that someone clicked and went to their site is data that they own. And you're absolutely right. They don't want that data to go somewhere else, but they may, for example, I'm making this up, they may want to take that data and co-op it in some way. Okay, if they're going to get value in some form or fashion. So some of our clients very much are very keen on trying to use data in very specific ways. So I guess, I don't see that there's a yes or no to this. I think that we as an industry need to come together to figure this out. It's a huge issue, but we need to figure out how to use data in a way that clearly benefits everybody that's involved, not just the publishers, not just the advertisers, and not just the consumers.
Well, okay. I didn't really hear anything that was going to, to put the fears of the publisher to rest there. Jay and Bob, you want to take a crack at it? Is there, what do you say to the publisher who has legitimate concerns that, hey, if you cookie my users, then you can essentially buy around me an hour from now. You can get the same people.
Right.
Go ahead. It doesn't. Mine's quick, probably. There's nothing like endemic inventory, and for me, it's a little bit different. And Jay, maybe you have a different perspective on it, but we don't work with large publishers as part of their inventory. So, I think it's a little different with us. We take on all the inventory. Could we then say, "Bye, we'll go find your users off-site and out of context"? Sure, we could. Why would we? The CPMs are dramatically lower at this point in our evolution. Will that change down the road? I don't know. But so really no benefit for us to do that. And because obviously our core business are those publisher relationships. But I don't know if Jay, if you have a different perspective.
Well, one of the things I was going to say is that I'm actually quite interested in giving people like Don the insights from our exchange, not from particular publishers, but around our area of expertise, which is context, and allow him to associate that with the database that he's building. Why? Because I know if I work with him to have him understand how we look at the world, that some of the times he's going to come back to me and say, hey, I'd like some more of that. Users are impressions with certain attributes work for me. You are one of a number of sources I can go to. So I think it's what we were saying before. It's, well, let's just come together, find a way that works for all of us. But again, net, we should all wind up ahead.
On the publisher side, sell it to me. right? I mean, mark it up so high that it makes sense economically for what it is.
Now you're talking.
We're very happy. Again, it's not about the price of the media. It's about the value of the impression.
Correct.
And any way that you guys can, that the publisher side of the house can increase that value of the impression through data, through sponsors, through just having the media there, whatever it is, all I'm suggesting is that we come together and have an economic term.
Okay, so we'll do the kumbaya, we'll do the group hug tonight at dinner. The data, the data issue, still out there among certain publishers. Bob, you kind of sit in the middle of this whole thing because on the one hand, you want to assure publishers that, what you just said about not sort of, taking their data and essentially, buying around them later on. By the same token, how do you feel about sort of handing over data to an agency-owned ad network or ad exchange?
Well, handing over data, it's going to be an issue for us, and frankly, it's going to have to be built into our contracts, right, with our individual publishers. So it's something that has to be looked at. We do it at some level now with our Quigo and Rubicon relationships and whatnot. Every publisher online, every publisher here does it at some level. It's just a matter, I guess, of at what depth we do it and how much transparency we provide beyond the contextual, which is pretty standardized now.
And
right?
data from the publishers is not static. It's not like
Right.
you give it away. I mean, there's a huge recency issue. There's human beings behind those impressions. They do crazy stuff. We want to constantly be, in that flow of information so that we can update our models and so forth. So it's not a giveaway. It's not a one-time thing. It's a relationship that we're building with the publisher.
Right.
Right. I would say, data from a specific publisher, and because that's what we're talking about. Is it's iVillage, it's New York Times, it's who. I mean, I don't mean to only name them. There's millions of them, but that's just like a stop motion picture of someone as they're running a marathon that lasts, if they're lucky, 80 some odd years. I mean, that's what we're trying to do. It's one tiny little snapshot in time, and more and more, there's going to be a lot of data economy development, especially in our business, given the amount of it that's created, generated, and collectible. But it is only just a little small picture. It's not like a premium content publisher's audience is going to pass through and never come back. It's not as though I'm going to find them somewhere else that's even greater or provides me with more insight than the place that they've passed through. And if I do, well, there's nothing wrong with me buying that, because that's just, I'm in the business of business, and so I have to, if that's going to generate the sale or the movement of a product or service on behalf of my client, then that's the way it is.
But if you believe in psychographic behavior drives ad interaction, that psychographic behavior doesn't change too much over that 80 years, right? So I think it's a very, very big issue that has to be addressed. Once you get some of that information, there are, at the one in New York, Jim Meyer, right, was from Mindset, was talking about his psychographic ad matching, right? So if you believe that, then once you get that DNA, so to speak, you could do lots with that. It may not be the same information you would get on someone's behavior at this instance in time, but you do get some pretty interesting DNA that you can act on. So I do think it's something that requires a lot more conversation.
And again, I would be proactive. There are companies that are springing up all the... he's going to sell the data to the agencies. There are other people that are selling data to the agencies. I would say, figure out an economic model that works, but the publishers have to get in that game too.
Yeah.
Fair point.
It's just not going to go away.
Right.
All right, so let's just do a reality check here. You got 5 middle-aged white guys on stage talking about data. It's almost 11 o'clock. It's after 11 o'clock. We had a couple minutes left here. I hope that we have delivered some value so far in kind of framing this issue. At this point, it's kind of your questions that are going to help us to sort of extract some more value from it, and then we'll kind of close on a final note about 10 minutes from now. I think I see somebody in the back corner there.
John Keck, donor.
Hi, John.
How you doing? How are you? The earlier speech, which I thought was fabulous, is kind of defining the industry right now, which is where it's headed. The train's on the station, it's coming at us. But we all seem to be whining about, that's DR, it's AdBlowers at 3 o'clock in the morning. No, it's data collection, it's the truth. It's not the great old intent to buy. Did they have intent to buy? And of course, 2% of them actually bought. It's who bought. So I just wonder if we're going to get off this winding road and actually deal with what's going on, figure out ways to monetize it and get together, or are we going to just keep fighting the future?
I didn't really hear anybody whining. But can you be specific? I mean, was it us or was it just in general people whining? Was I whining? Tell me, John.
No, I'm just...
Be my friend.
It seems like we're worried about he's capturing too much data. He's going to own the data. He's not going to pay us enough money. He's going to steal it all, and we're going to have nothing left.
Well, I think that if the alternative is just kind of blind acceptance, then I think that's probably a bad strategy too. I think what we're talking about here is not so much kind of whining about it, but I think there's probably a very legitimate negotiation that's going on, and I think that we talked about, hey, Don said himself, these are things we have to talk about. I think that you have people on all ends of the spectrum. I think when it's a long-tail site, when it's somebody that doesn't have an ad infrastructure, that's got very little investment in bringing people to their to their website or any real long-term relationship with a lot of those folks, sure. I got data. What do you mean? Just going to send me a check? Terrific, right? I think on the other end of the spectrum, when you have Turner and Walker Jacobs is just this side of Oliver Stone when it comes to the his concern about data. He's got a legitimate concern, and he is going to freak out a little bit about it. So I think there's a big spectrum of folks in between. What do you guys think?
I think for me, we've been talking about this for a number of years, and we have seen a decided shift in the publishing ad network community. To be much more embracing of this. So I would say, a couple of years ago, there was rejection. There's no way I'm doing this, forget it. And we went on our way and the whole bit. And I think over time, people have said, hey, we're getting this data anyhow from other data sources, and they've said, well, come on in, what kinds of things do you want to do? Oh, and you're willing to pay for it? Fantastic. Okay, so I think it's been an evolution, and it's actually one of the reasons that I was very happy to come here today, is just put it out on the table. Because these are things that are, huge issues for us as an industry. And I think the more we can talk about it and actually come up with a set of, principles that govern it, the better. So I do think that there was a lot of whining before. But I do see that the industry is changing.
I think I can mirror that a little bit, because with the event that Scott and I host for sellers, the Seller Forum, we bring together leaders of 50 or 60 different companies, sales leaders. And I can tell you that that 3 to 4 years ago, there was the movement from sort of benign neglect of the ad network question, and then it moved into kind of paranoia, and now it's in a somewhat more thoughtful place. There's a little bit of resignation and a little bit of like, hey, maybe there's something in this for me. So I think people move along that spectrum, but I think that when we kind of characterize that movement as sort of and resistance to innovation as whining, I think we start to lose people, and then we sort of literally put we raise the barrier back up.
Yeah. I have a couple observations. I mean, one is I think some work on data sharing and policy has already been done. I know Jeff Hirsch is here from RevSci, and they've put together a group of people in the behavioral camp to create some kind of standards and guidelines. I think you're going to see more of that come out of groups like the IAB. And I actually think data will become an opportunity on platforms for publishers. So you'll be selling not just impressions, but data as well. So,
okay.
So, Doug, this is Susie Ryder with YouTube. I'm in the corner. I'm interrupting.
There you are. Hi, Susie.
The 5 middle-aged white men.
Please.
So,
would you come up on stage with us and give us right. We could be your backup singers?
My question is really for Don. Is that what do the publishers needed to do to contribute, to accept, to certify, to believe in order to fuel your vision of the agency of the future? Or does it happen with or without our collaboration?
Yeah, I think it has to be with your collaboration if everyone is going to succeed. All I'm suggesting is that we see this is how the industry is moving. We see different companies that are popping up, whether they're ad networks or data providers or technology companies, that are moving to enable us to get to this vision. There is so much more that we can do by working together in the data area on a publisher-by-publisher basis that, again, for me, it's all about putting the issue out there and trying to figure out a forum that we can do this in a positive way. Because I think, especially in today's times, I mean, my fees go down every year, okay? So I need to make sure that I'm becoming more efficient. And back to someone's point before, my clients aren't paying me to buy run-of-network. They're not paying me to buy any of that stuff. They're paying me to do wonderful media plans, integrations, cross-media, and so forth. Probably 30% or more of my agency is just buying the stuff that is, back and forth that could be automated, right? And we want to get to that ideas. So all I'm saying is your question, I think we go publisher by publisher, we try the best we can, but the industry is moving forward like this, and we're going to take advantage of whatever that we can.
You go publisher by publisher, network by network, exchange by exchange, correct? So in terms of when we say publishers, we tend to talk about actual site creators and so forth. So you may end up creating those data relationships through any number of sources. Yes?
That's right.
Okay, great. So how many people in the audience represent either networks or aggregators of some kind? Raise your hands. Okay, so this question ought to be particularly interesting to all of you. I'm gonna go down the line for one of the only times on the panel right now and ask this question. Okay, so first of all, raise your hand if you think that currently there are 300 or so ad networks in existence. How many people on the panel think that there will be 300 or more 2 years from now? Okay, so there's going to be a thinning of the herd somehow, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I think there's going to be just as many jobs, but maybe fewer players. So if you were running an ad network today, what's going to be the difference between the ad networks that survive and thrive and the ones that ultimately go away? Jimmy, why don't you take first crack at that?
Oof. Well, gosh, if I really knew that, I would run out and start one, and then. But
sorry, Jimmy, you missed the VC window, my friend.
But I'm going to fake it. Well, this isn't going to be fair to everyone, so I'm going to do my best here. But when we talk about ad networks, without getting too specific, just in general, the core differentiator is going to be, cost, service, and quality. And quality can be defined in a number of different ways. The technology that's brought to bear, the kinds of performances that I'm going to yield, which are in no small part dependent upon the sites that are found within that network. Not that I necessarily have to know what they are, I just need to know that it's somehow yielding value, and again, that's different than cost. And I think it's really going to be pretty much that simple. Mm-hmm. There are going to be a lot fewer players, but the field they play on will be a lot more level.
Okay. All right, not quite. I'm not quite there yet. I see what you're saying about quality and and service and so forth. I'm not sure that's enough.
So we go well beyond that ad rep piece. So the ad rep piece, we all know it, ad ops and whatnot, relationships. It's very important for the long and mid-tail. Again, we're a little unique, but it's very important for the long and mid-tail that we provide services, publisher services, content distribution, whatnot. we have we're investing our technology and money now to develop publisher tools, UIs and widget deployment tools and whatnot. So content sharing, a CMS system amongst the publishers.
Let me repackage that a little bit. So essentially, a value ingredient for you is being able to keep together this rather exclusive club of sites. With by offering them services that only members can have.
Well, let's face it, that publishers with networks are quite fickle, right? Mm-hmm. Ask any publisher, they're constantly switching between remnant and contextual. So to get rid of that and to keep it a little more stable, yes, publisher tools, services, CMS, integration amongst publishers, and then once you have all that, that becomes this kind of a web. You like a GLAM, has, I think 5% or a very small percent of their traffic goes actually to glam.com.
Right.
And they leverage all of the fragmented traffic, but they also share. There's a web there. So I think that's very important. We also need to provide them experience, knowledge, and whatnot.
So a network that truly behaves like a network would be a way to
truly
put
behaves
that.
like a network or a big, huge Uber publisher, yeah.
Okay. Jay, who's going to make it?
One is I think the 300 number is a little misleading. I think that there's a very small number of those that are of any kind of material size. So I would say that part of this battle has already kind of been decided. But networks have always been good at producing and delivering scale. What they've been less good at is delivering control. And I think you've seen innovations on technology, be it behavioral, architectural, to deliver that control. And that a lot of winners are there. And another big area, too, that I think winners emerge from is those networks or exchanges that can turn around and deliver insight back to the buyer. And not just insight about the piece of media that they're selling, but really insight across that can be applicable to other planning and buying for that customer.
Okay. Don, we're just about out of time now, so what do you think in terms of...
Very quickly, I couldn't agree with you more. If you've got it and no one else, we'd love to hear about it, you know. If you can teach us something, we would love to hear about it. And if you can help with that human element about making sure that we can do, contextual or sponsorship integrations or anything like those. What does not work, and we hear this all the time, is that I've got a better platform, my technology works better, I have access to inventory. We always get pitched that. If the ad network is closer to the publisher, whether it's a DoubleClick or an AdX, or whether it's closer to the browser, okay, those I think are probably the networks that are going to win. The networks that are kind of in the middle, they're a little bit down the decision tree on both sides, those are the ones that are going to get squeezed.
Fair point. We are out of time. Thank you guys very much. I thought that was very illuminating.